Hello my friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink with a couple of fun little get well soon cards using some of the newest Pretty Pink Posh May 2023 release. So right now I am snipping apart the new Get Well Mug Editions die set, and I thought I would keep this in the video. When I have wafer die sets that are tabbed together, some brands aren't. They come, already separated. Some come tabbed. Either or, just depends on a million different factors. So anyway, when they're tabbed, I prefer to use a good quality pair of SNIPS. These ones are from Studio Katia. I'll have a link to them with everything else. But the thing to note is when snipping apart wafer dies, I will remove like one wafer die from the set and I'll just snip it apart. The little tabs though, I don't snip those. If you look kind of closely, I pinch it with the die snips and then I twist and it comes right off and it's not flinging everywhere, because if you've been doing this for enough years, that was literally like a hazard back in the day. Plus, I found when I started pinching and twisting the little tabs off, it's so much easier on my hands, because I do this as a job. Sometimes I would have, multiple die sets that I would need to detab like all at once, and like my hands would ache. This works. And then I just keep like a little tissue, or in this case, like a dry baby wipe, to catch all those little pieces. I do it all at once and I'm good to go, and my hand doesn't hurt and life is great. So I detabbed my little set. And this is, yes, another one of the new mug editions wafer dies. Pretty Pink Posh came out with the winter mugs, was the original set. That's the one with the actual mug. And then they've come out with multiple add-ons. I'll have links to everything. I'll do a link to the new release as well, because there's a ton of fabulous products. Love. But with this, and I've talked about this before, with these like brands that are doing these add-on sets, so there's multiple sets and they all coordinate, I keep them stored together so that when I reach for one, I've got everything. Especially if it's something like this where you need, at the bare minimum, you need the base set, so the winter mugs set, to use the add-ons. So it was like Simon's last release or the one before. Again, I'll have links to them too. They have these new storage envelopes that are pretty heavy duty. So I pulled one of those out, and that's how I'm going to store all these mug die sets, because there are multiples of them. I'm so excited. So the Get Well came out in this release, and there's a graduation one. So cute. I'll have to do a video on that one, hopefully soon. And then there were like birthday and Easter and Valentine's. Love. They're so cute. I've done a couple videos already on the Easter ones. I did ones on the birthday set. I'll have those linked at the end of this video. And then for today's cards, I went with the Get Well set because they're all just adorable. I have such a soft spot for Pretty Pink Posh products. I have been a professional hoarder and collector of their stuff for years. And yeah, working on more videos. So anyway, for all the die cutting, I did a ton of die cutting. This entire card is, the card front anyway, all die cuts. And when it comes to die cuts, I do everything at once. So my first step was detabbing the whole die set. And then my next step was die cutting. And I die cut all white cardstock for this. You could do color cardstock, just like choose a color combo and go with it. I went with white because I wanted to add color with inks. And also it's just for me, at least for this set and my mindset, I was like, it'll just be easier. I'll die cut everything in white, and then I'll choose like what elements I want to add color to. So the mugs, I used the winter mugs for the actual mugs. The window that I cut out of the mugs, that's from the birthday mug set. And again, I'll have links to everything. And the window I would just tape in place with a little bit of Easy C tape. And I used my little EMPRESS mini there that you can see on screen that I've been showing in recent videos. I did this for all my die cutting, and this is sped up. The machine isn't this fast, although man, it would be nice if it was. Although if it was this fast, the plates would actually go like flying out of it if you didn't catch them. So it's a good thing they're not as fast as it shows in, when I've sped up my videos. Anywho, I'm getting sidetracked. So I do all my die cutting, and with these wafer dies, with all of Pretty Pink Posh's die sets like this, I've noticed, she keeps everything connected together that go together. So there's like 2 little pieces to do the little pills, because there's a piece you can layer on to add color. So those are connected. So that's technically one wafer die. Same with the little band-aid. It's the band-aid and the little heart, and they're connected. So it's one die that die cuts 2 pieces. And it's like that with all the other dies in the set, which I love that, because then you don't have to like hunt through, especially with a set that has multiple pieces, multiple things going on. Having it connected means that I don't have to go fishing through the die sets like, oh, where's that little heart, or where's this, or what is this one thing. And I'm pointing that out because I didn't even really notice that the first time I was using some of these die sets, like however long ago. And because I was like, I was like, what is this die cut? Like, what is this for? And then it was like, oh, well, it's connected to this one. Oh, it goes with this. Anyway. So maybe some of y'all's brains just take a little while to catch up like mine. So I thought I would point that out. It just makes life a little easier. So I did all my die cutting, and I was just using just panels of white cardstock. And you can't really see it because it's kind of off more to the left, but I just had little piles. I kept everything separate. So, the little sunshine pieces were in one little pile. The cups are in a pile. The, little add-ons were all in their own little section, basically, to make things easier. So once I was done all my die cutting, I started sticking them to my stick and stamp mats just to hold the die cuts in place. And then I am just pouncing on Simon's Positively Saturated inks with my little picket fence paper pouncers. Game changer. I have been loving adding ink this way. It's so fast. And yeah, I started with yellows, because just like my go-to with anything, if I'm using yellow for anything, I always start with yellow. It's the lightest color. It's the one most apt to like pick up other colors, get contaminated, etc. So I started with my yellow. Normally I would do like all my ink, add all my ink and then start doing assembly. But since I had so many pieces, I found it was just as quick and easy. And also because these are very easy to assemble. Like each little section, little pieces, they're easy to assemble. Like the sun, you add the circle, that's it. So I just assembled as I was pulling them off the stick and stamp mat. Saves me the time and effort. And then in between, since I've got both stick and stamp mats going here, I took the other one and I just rinse it off in the sink with water, and I let it air dry, which doesn't take very long. Because I'm finding too, depending on what I'm doing, a lot of times is my sponges will pick up some of the other colors that are on the mat. So it's like, just use multiple mats, rinse them off with water, let them air dry in between, and I just kind of rotate and it works. So then the next little section of inking, I was doing marine ink, so just a nice blue. And my colors were inspired by the bling that Pretty Pink Posh released. And I will show that later in the video, because I was like, which one do I use? But that's what inspired the color combo. And then I added yellow because I was like, ooh, there's that little sun. It needs to be yellow. And I was like, ooh, that'll be a good addition, because, yellow is bright and cheerful and happy. And my only peeve with yellow is when I go to actually photograph and edit the pictures for like my blog, etc. And you guys will see it at the end. It goes neon. I struggle. I love it. I love yellow. It looks beautiful. It makes me happy. But man, and filming it sometimes too, it'll go like green. It's weird. Anyway, all my little pouncing and then assembling. I was using my little triangle trays to just keep these different die cuts and that separate. So it just made life easier. And then, like I said, I was just pulling them off and assembling them as I took them off, because and that actually just worked a lot easier, because again, there's like I die cut a ton of the little pills, because I thought I would do, put those in the center of the cups, which you'll see, and then the little band-aids and whatnot. So I just kept working my way around and grabbing different pieces and then adding the ink. And then for the little band-aids, I was just using a bit of Post-it tape, and I masked off the center area, there's little like stitch lines. That's another reason why I love all these die sets, because there's all this extra detail with like piercing elements and stitch lines and things like that, and they just give it that extra something. So like I said, you could skip like doing all the inking and just die cut it from solid colors of cardstock, and all the little stitch lines and piercing details and whatnot just add all that extra detail. So yeah, the sky's the limit, like with everything. So I went on to purple, which was lilac positively saturated ink, and I was using my little Simon's place and score embellishment tool, because that always comes in handy. Any of these, like, you know, embellishment wands, wax tools, etc., are a must have, especially when working with smaller die cuts. It just makes life so much easier. So much easier. So went through that, and then the next color I used was Tropic. So kind of a greeny aqua sort of a color. And then I also pulled out Royal, which is just a much deeper blue. And again, love. For whatever reason, I don't use blue very often. I've mentioned this before. I love the color blue. I do not know why. I don't know what it is. I just don't reach for it. And then every time I do, I'm like, ooh, blue is beautiful. I need more blue on my cards. So I did Royal. And then after I got pretty much, I think everything like had its ink, it's time to really like start assembling. So there's this little wand element in the die set. It's got a little flower and a little leaf. Like, seriously, how cute is this? Seriously. Love it. So assembled those little pieces, assembled all the little pills. I did not make these into shaker cards, but you totally could. And I did on, I think it was a birthday video I did, which I'll have links to the end, that I did a full on like actual shaker window foam tape, etc. But you could totally make these into actual little shaker mugs and have the little pills and maybe some of the bling. It would be adorable. So didn't do that this time, but it's definitely an option, and it would look so cute. So I assembled everything. The little rainbow, like I said, it was all one die. So it cut the outline, and then the other part of the die cut the separate pieces and the clouds, etc. So then all you have to do is either cut it from colored cardstock or do like I did, ink them up. It all just adheres together, layers perfectly. And there's this little prescription piece. So it cuts the little, like, you know, prescription, the white part with the stitch lines as the lines. And then the little prescription notation, and that I die cut from black cardstock. And then adhered that into place as well. It was the only thing I used something other than white cardstock was that, and then the sentiment, which I'll get to in a second. So for the like drink portion, this is from the original, that's the ovals I'm adhering right now. Those are from the original winter mug die set. And I just die cut those from white just to keep things simple, since I decided to keep the back portion white as well. And I started adhering everything together. And this is the nice thing about doing more than one at the same time is, and I do this a lot, like usually off camera, is when I'm doing multiples, I will sit and fiddle and, you know, figure out my layout. So this works if you're doing like a full die cut card with a bunch of little die cuts, or there's a bunch of stamped images. You know, you got to build a layout or a scene or whatever it is. It's nice having, you know, a whole second set, because I'll do all my fiddling, you know, figure out my layout, how I want things to look. Once I'm happy with it, I don't have to even bother like taking a photo, using press and seal. Like we've got a lot of little tricks we show in videos on, you know, how to adhere it all down and not forget what you started with, because I forget all the time. It's like I'll do this entire layout, and then if I remove anything, I will completely forget what I did. So taking a photo helps a ton. But doing it like this, and then I will adhere, which I'll show everything on the second card front. So the sentiment, I decided to adhere directly to that little prescription, because of course it was sized and like kind of meant for that. And I'd also die cut that from black cardstock, I really wanted it to stand out. So I'm going to adhere that, and I'm just using craft tacky glue. I've shown this in a ton of videos. I have this is a little Gina K bottle, and I put craft tacky glue in it, and it's got that little detail tip, perfect for fine little die cuts, sentiments, etc. And I also took some just light blue cardstock from my stash, and I die cut it with a stitched rectangle wafer die that's smaller than what's going to be my A2 card base. And after I die cut that, I used the new Swiss Dots stencil from Pretty Pink Posh, and I just taped the light blue panel to the back of the stencil, and then I used the royal ink in my paper pouncer to add the ink over the stencil, so it just gives it the little dots and also brings in more of that bright blue that is just gorgeous. And I've got my layout figured out. I had also die cut an extra little band-aid and did added the yellow inks to it because I was like it needed more yellow. So I've got my layout figured out. I've stenciled the one panel. Now I can start adhering everything to that second one on the left using everything on the right as my guide, because nothing on that right card there is adhered. It's just laying there as I had fiddled and figured out my placement. So I used that as my guide, which made it so much faster to this is super sped up. I don't work this quickly in real life. Yeah, and that gets mentioned sometimes, but yeah, no, this is the magic of video editing. Not nearly this quick. Plus all the interruptions, everything else. I splice it all together so it all looks like I had a perfect crafting session, but yet no, not even remotely. So I used mostly glue to adhere everything, a little bit of thin foam squares here and there for some of the elements just because of like the layers. And so the first panel was adhered. With the second one, I needed to stencil over it as well. I didn't even need to use my ink pad. I just pulled all the ink that was already on the stencil that was just left and used that with the pouncer and stenciled the second little blue panel. Once I did that, I could then adhere everything in the exact same way. Quick, simple, easy, get them all layered. I did those separately, as you can see, on purpose. I didn't want to adhere these to my card base yet because I want to add a ton of splatter. So before I add the splatter though, I took a bit of Post-it tape and I just stuck it over the sentiment, only because I didn't want to risk getting too much splatter on the sentiment since I wanted that to be legible and obvious and all the things. So, and you guys know I'm going to go heavy on the splatter. This was, yeah, love it. So masked off those first. And then I put these panels into my splat box, and I also put the little elements that, like the band-aids and the little pills, because I had purposely die cut some extras and assemble, inked and assembled them because those are going to go on the inside of the card. So I put those in my splat box as well. And then we are going to go to town and we are going to splatter because I love it. And it just gives it it's just giving. It is just giving. So first bit is Perfect Pearl Powder, of course. So Ranger Perfect Pearl Powder, stick some on my little palette, add a bit of water, get my fan brush, and I'm going to splatter this. Doesn't look like a whole lot on camera. In real life, it is shimmery, and you get the little texture and the little bits here and there, and it just, love, love, love. So heavily splattered this all over, just everything. And then white gouache. Same idea. I stick a bit of it on my palette. I get a little bit of water to thin it out so that you can actually splatter with it. And then this one, again, heavy amounts of splatter. The white gouache goes on more opaque, but it does dry back a little bit. And because these were ink blended, sometimes gouache will absorb a little bit of that ink as it's drying. So it will go even more subtle, which I'm totally fine with. Yeah. Love it. So that's usually also why I go a little heavier handed when I'm doing things that I've done a bunch of ink blending on, because it's not like stark white, super distracting in my opinion. But you guys know I love me some splatter. So did all of that, let those dry. Card bases, Simon's Smooth White Cardstock. These are top folding A2 cards, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And on the insides, I'm stamping a sentiment from the new Get Well Soon stamp set, and I stamped that with VersaFine Claire Nocturne ink onto the insides of the cards, and then I adhered those little band-aids and the little pills, the extra little pills that I had die cut. So figured out that little layout, adhered those into place with craft tacky glue, and yeah. Oh, this was the other thing I was going to mention. I was thinking about this like as I was making these cards, because yeah, these were die cut heavy. You know, a little. I don't like to call them time consuming. More effort was put in. But the thing I love, and this applies to just card making in general, but especially things like Get Well Soon, sympathy cards, like those sorts of ones. I am someone who very much struggles with like what to write in my cards, what to say to people. Like I just, you know, I go to sit down and write something on a card and I'm like, my brain just goes blank. But that's why I make cards. I always hope that the recipient, when they receive a card from me, like understands, like I put in, you know, a bunch of time and effort and money. You guys know. We always joke about it. You know, it's like we could have bought this card for $8, but instead we'll spend like $100 on supplies. Whatever. It is therapy. It is wonderful. I love my card making. But all that to say, I do all this so that the recipient knows, like, even if my words aren't the greatest on the inside, that, you know, I put in the time and effort and I was thinking about them as I was doing this, especially if I do it like custom for someone. Yeah. Did that make sense? I hope it did. That was the thought process. That was those were the words that were going through my head. Again, I'm not good with words. I do this as a job. I'm a professional. Anyway, there's the bling I showed there. And again, I'll have links to all of that as well. That's some of the new little confetti mixes that Pretty Pink Posh released. And I was like, yes, love. Oh, they're so pretty. And that's what inspired the colors. So I used the mint shimmer confetti on these. I was going to use all of it, but I was like, okay, I'm literally running out of space on these cards. So I just showed them. You guys can see the colors and I'll link to them and then I'll use them in future videos. So I adhered those into place with dabs of craft tacky glue, and that finished off these cards. I seriously had such a blast making these, and just the inks, everything was just vibing and working, and shimmer and splatter and all of it. Like, would this card not cheer you up if you received it when you were feeling really, really cruddy or going through something? You know, that's what I was aiming for. So, like I mentioned earlier, I will have links to the release, all the supplies I used, etc., my blog post, all of that. That will be in the description box below the video, so you can check that out if you are interested. See what I mean? Like, the color turns neon when I do the photos. Anyway, all that will be below. I'll have links to the other videos I've done here at the end. Thank you all so much for watching, thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you, and I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.